All right, you two. I am so appreciative of having you guys available for this presentation of countercurrents. It's a funny thing about the internet. 3 years ago, we didn't know each other. Now we're friends, and I count you genuinely as friends. So it makes
No doubt. Even though I'm wearing a proper shirt, you still count me as your friend. That says a lot.
Absolutely. So the people that are watching this, I hope you take time to hit the like and subscribe button. It helps build out countercurrents. But listen, we've got so much going on right now with what I believe are the preparations for a renewed attack by Israel and the United States on Iran. And part of what I see as a clear indicator of that is this massive propaganda campaign that's underway right now that is painting Iran as on the brink of collapse. The riots of crossing the country that's on fire. The Ayatollah Khamenei is planning his escape to Moscow. So I said, well, all right, who can I talk to that can help pour water on this fire? And it was Professor Marandi and Nima. So, gentlemen, take it away. But let's start. Let me start with Nima simply because he hasn't been back to Iran for 12 years. So, first tell people who you are, because not everybody watches the Dialog Works channel, but hopefully we'll get some new viewers for you.
Yeah, as you know, and those people who don't know me, I'm the host of Dialog Works. Dialog Works is a YouTube channel. We usually discuss the geopolitical issues. And as you mentioned, I'm originally from Iran. I live in Brazil, but I am originally from Iran. And I've been out of Iran for more than 12 years, and I'm back here in Iran right now. And uh, I don't know if you need anything else from me.
Just
personally.
What is your biggest sort of surprise or takeaway, comparing what you left 12 years ago and what you're seeing today?
Yeah. The Iran that I see today, Larry, is somehow different because of the young people. The young people are so much different from they call it Gen Z. And many people many people in the West, they don't understand what is going on right now, because since I got here, I was witnessing, as usual, what's going on in the mainstream media in the West and what's going on in the alternative media and what's really happening here in Iran. I got here, almost uh, 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and I was seeing and everything was, blasting in the mainstream media that people are out. They want regime change in Iran. They want to change everything. And it was so much different, so much, it wasn't even comparable with the reality of what was happening in Iran. People are not, you can see some sort of protest. I haven't seen when I was in Tehran. I'm not in Tehran right now. But for 10 days I was in Tehran to see what's going on there. I haven't seen any protests in Tehran, but I've seen the footages of these protests. Mostly the people want to somehow, you know, criticize the government for their policies, considering the economy we're on, the inflation, the exchange rate when it comes to dollar. And then you see when the media comes in, you see some sort of moves to turn the protests into riots, to change the whole concept of these protests. And the sort of coverage you see, the sort of manipulation that is happening is unbelievable, Larry. You have to be inside Iran. You have to see what's going on here. And you see what they're reporting in the mainstream media, in the alternative media, unfortunately, that is totally disconnected from reality.
Mm-hmm. Professor, and let me point out, Nima's the genuine Iranian because he was born in Iran. I'm talking to a boy from Virginia. Professor Marandi was born in Virginia, grew up a little, for the early years in Ohio, but went back to Iran and shed blood and fought on behalf of his country. So you're not just a professor; you're actually a well-rounded, brave individual. So, Professore, take it away.
Thank you very much, Larry. And I promise to wear the shirt next time.
Yeah.
There will be, that's for certain. I agree with Nima. Nima, of course, I should add, he's an academic in Brazil, and I call him Nima because he's so much younger than me. Otherwise, he is a professor. I think that there is a major. Well, first of all, Western media is not trustworthy, and I think that even whether United States, whether whatever political affiliation people have nowadays, they have a major mistrust for legacy media, mainstream media. But when it comes to foreign policy, I think that mistrust is not as great as it is when it comes to local issues, which I think is a bit unjustified, because if it's unreliable, then it's unreliable. In Iran, as you know, and as I'm sure your viewers know, because your viewers are very politically aware, like Nima's viewers, we've been under sanctions for decades. Ever since the revolution, effectively,
Right.
we've been under sanctions. And the US and Western sanctions have increased over the years. So let me give you an example. In the 1980s, during the war, the West and the Soviet bloc literally prevented us from purchasing anything. When they were giving Saddam, for example, when the Europeans with US support and through Saudi and Kuwaiti funding, when they were giving Saddam Hussein weapons, including chemical weapons to use against us, we were not able to even purchase gas masks. Iran had to purchase gas masks on the black market, and they purchased some from North Korea. And my own gas mask on one occasion at least, it was a North Korean gas mask. So, and then the chemicals and all that are needed to counter chemical weapons, because when they use chemical weapons, you have to clean up that area. All of those were sanctioned. Then after the war, the U.S. sanctioned Iran's oil and gas, and then ultimately under Obama, everything was sanctioned because we had the maximum pressure sanctions. The maximum pressure sanctions actually didn't begin with Trump; they began with Obama. But in any case, the point is that because of this, the Iranian government has always had problems with Turkey. And sanctions restricts the government in purchases, in investment, and of course the constant threats made by the West makes some people fearful of even investing in the country. So that's one problem. So that is one reason why our currency goes down, because we have a problem bringing in foreign currencies. We don't have enough of them often. The second is that we often have problems with our oil exports. Nowadays, we're exporting oil at maximum, but in any case, we've had this problem in the past, and that is another problem. The third is that for many years, Iran has been, the government, different administrations have been heavily subsidizing oil and electricity, gasoline, natural gas. All homes in Iran, literally almost all homes, have natural gas, and even water. But so, for example, gasoline in Iran is 1 cent a liter. And so
Man,
and this causes huge problems because, first of all, consumption goes through the roof. Also, smuggling takes place, and the government has to pay for that gap between what we pay and what the real cost is. And so, when the government is constantly paying huge amounts of money for gasoline, for the electricity subsidies, for the gas subsidies, then they're short of money. And so they have to print money. And when they print money, that causes devaluation.
Yeah.
And right now, the current government is beginning reforms, energy reforms, which are necessary.
All right, folks, hold on just a second. We've got something important to share with you. First off, a big thank you for all your incredible support. Our team's been putting in the hours, really working hard to bring you insightful guests, new and improved formats, solid, high-quality analysis every week. Our next goal, hitting that 100,000 subscriber mark and getting that silver button. Let's make it happen together. Every like, comment, share, and subscription truly helps us grow and keep improving. All right then, let's get back to the video.
And this was going to begin under President Raisi's administration, and then he passed away in the helicopter crash. And now, after over a year of President Pezeshkian's first term in office, they are beginning this. Now, whether it's the right time or not, this is a debate in Iran. But so he's beginning this reform. Also, his administration wants to have a single rate for the currency, because we have multiple rates also for subsidies, and it causes corruption, obviously. But they want to push first. This is a policy that many agree upon, almost everyone agrees upon. But again, that there's an argument over timing. So we've had a lot of inflation recently because of some of the beginning of some of the changes, the reforms, and that's caused and that we had fall in the currency, and also because from my understanding, the United States is pressure on countries not to give us our dollars, and so this together has created a economic difficulty for business people. And I don't know, 8-9 days ago, people in some business people in the city center, they went to the streets. It was a peaceful protest. They were protesting the economy and the central bank because the currency had fallen. Because for them, they say, for example, like I'm using a cell phone. I'm using my laptop right now.
Yeah.
If I want to sell my laptop and you purchase it, and then the currency falls tomorrow, I can't buy a new laptop to bring to my shop to sell again.
Right.
Or if the price goes up, no one's going to buy my laptop. Or if there's fluctuation, people will not purchase because they don't know if they should buy now or buy later. And I don't know if I should sell. So this uncertainty was the cause of their protest. What happened was that just like 3-4 years ago, when Mahsa Amini passed away, when she passed away, Western Persian-language media, BBC Persian and the others, immediately went and created this narrative that she was beaten and tortured to death. 3 days later, the footage came out, and it was clear that this was not true. It was a lie. There's no evidence that she was beaten or tortured to death, because there is footage, it's online. There's footage of her going into the police station and she was fine. Now, whether they should have taken her or not, that's a different issue. But
Right.
she had a precondition, and anyway, she passed away. She had an operation when she was a child on her brain. In any case, she passed away, sadly. And then, but back then, they were just like the first day here. The first day after she passed away, there were peaceful demonstrations. And then again, there was infiltration began. This time around, the demonstrations were much smaller. The infiltrations, like last time, began, but the infiltrations this time were smaller than last time. So there are two things we have to talk about. One is the protests. People who are not opposed to the Constitution and to the state, but they are unhappy with the administration and the government and how the state is dealing with the economy. And then there are those who are rioting. Among the rioters, 4 years ago, funding from abroad. Now, that doesn't mean all of them are. Some of them are organized crime. Some of them are just people excited and are fully involved in burning buses or taking down shops or attacking police officers. But a lot of them are trained. And the evidence, Pompeo. I mean, there's a lot of evidence, but I mean, for those in the West, Pompeo, who was the head of the CIA, just a few days ago tweeted that Mossad,
Right.
who were with the protesters or rioters. And also there are evidence, but one interesting piece of evidence is what I also, I mean, the Persian language media in the West is funded by Western intelligence agencies.
Right.
They have TV channels, they have online websites, they have Telegram channels, and they have cyber armies. Many of them are calling for violence and promoting violence. One of them is called Iran International, which is based in London. They have people in Tel Aviv, and they also have people in Washington, and their funding obviously comes from Western agencies. They have been calling for armed struggle, for people to attack the government. And I've tweeted that. And I also, Channel 4 News wanted to have a recorded interview with me for a soundbite, and I said no. If it's a live interview or if everything I say is published, I'll participate. But I sent them this clip. I said, look, your government is funding and hosting a TV channel that's calling for people to bear arms and kill police officers and kill other people in Iran. Your government has sanctioned all Iranian media, all Russian media, all Lebanese media or media affiliated with the resistance, Venezuelan media, for what? Because they say things you don't like. But you allow these media outlets to promote violence, to encourage violence, and to constantly, of course, produce misinformation and disinformation to create fear and uncertainty in Iran and that sort of thing. So that is basically what's happening. But are the riots widespread? They're small in number. They're in multiple cities. They're very violent at times. They've killed a number of police officers. A number of ordinary people, including the rioters, have also been killed. They burnt down banks. They burnt down buses. They've burned people's cars. They've actually thrown Molotov cocktails into people's houses, apartment buildings, and that sort of thing. So it is not. And the irony, of course, is that we just less than 24 hours ago, I think roughly 24 hours ago, we had the murder in the United States, where ICE troops or officials murdered a woman, shot her in the face. I mean, if that had happened in Iran, the entire West would have been shown outrage, and they would have taken it to the U.S. Security Council or something like that. And not only do they do it in there, but the president supports it. Whereas in Iran, we don't have such instances and such cases, such footage. But no one in Iran is happy about anyone being killed on the streets, including the violent rioters who have guns in their hands and who are shooting at police officers. So the hypocrisy, of course, and we have the genocide in Gaza, which I don't want to get into. So the hypocrisy, or the protesters, there's also footage of people just standing there, and then these ICE people start spraying them in the face. I mean, in Iran, we don't have such footage. But if we did, the entire Western mainstream media would be day and night condemning Iran and telling people how horrible Iran is. So that's basically it. That doesn't mean that everyone supports the revolution in Iran. That doesn't mean that there are no problems in Iran. No, there are many problems in Iran. But it's like every other country in the world. But it is a country under maximum pressure sanctions. And one of the things that we've been seeing over the past few days, and sorry for talking so long, I'll just end it here, is especially over the last couple of days, people hostile towards Iran are showing footage of Iranians who are protesting against the rioters in very large numbers, and saying these are anti-regime protesters, as they call them.
Well, let me ask you both a question. Um, it appears that I think the first indications that there were, quote, protests in Iran was a week ago Sunday, or was it Monday? A week ago Monday. Do you know?
I think it was Sunday.
You agree?
Yeah, I can check on the internet. I'll look.
Well, the reason I bring that up is what happened a week ago Monday? Donald Trump met with Bibi Netanyahu.
Right. Yeah.
I don't believe in coincidence. I believe that this was a planned intelligence operation carried out, funded by the CIA and by Mossad through this national coalition of resistance of Iran, the NCRI, which is basically, as I understand it, a front group for the Mujahideen al-Khalq, the MEK, and the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran, PMOI. Do you think I'm hallucinating, or do you think that that is most likely what's happening? And Nima, what do you think?
Yeah, I really think, Larry, it has something to do with what has happened in the United States between Donald Trump and Netanyahu. But the problem, in my opinion, is we can get the signs before happening through these media that Professor Marandi mentioned, Iran International. These are sending signs that something is coming. You have to watch, TV channels to understand what is the rhetoric, what is the propaganda that is coming in. And you feel that. It's not just about making argument, making new sort of argument without anything backing them. There is something going on. I think what the main message from the Iranian president Pezeshkian, he said they couldn't do it during the 12-day war. That's why they're trying to manipulate the society from within, because that's the main goal, Larry. I can say, Larry, Iran has never been as powerful as it is today in its recent history. We haven't been the country hasn't been that much powerful militarily. And right now, I think the only arena for the government in Israel and those people in Washington who want to do the so-called regime change in Iran is manipulating the internal society, the current affairs of the society here in Iran. Before coming here, Larry, I talked with Professor Marandi because there was a woman just taking off everything at a university in Tehran. She wanted to make some sort of chaos in those days before me coming here in Iran. And I asked him, what has happened? Because you see, the government is understanding, the security force understanding, they're trying to make the same case as the case of Mahsa Amini, as Professor Marandi mentioned. And they went after these sort of moves to make some sort of unrest within the society. They couldn't do it so far. So what else they can do? The only thing that right now, the only leverage they have, the only manipulation they do the economy of Iran is the way that they can, play with the sanctions.
Mm-hmm.
And most of this going on with sanctions, Larry, it's something, psychological, imposed by the media from outside. The media is somehow convincing the people who are protesting, mostly in Iran. The reality of the economy is obvious. We know the sanction, we know the influence these sanctions had on the economy of Iran. But outside of these sort of real consequences of the sanctions, you see the rhetoric, you see the propaganda being injected from outside, that everything is collapsing. This government cannot resolve anything, and it's going to be the same. While the government is trying to do everything, you see, every day, as Professor Marandi said, just dealing with the energy issue. I talked with Colonel Wilkerson, and it's winter in the United States and it's winter here in Iran. I was at my sister's house and it's so hot here. Why are you? It's unbelievable because they don't pay, Larry. They don't understand what the economy, the way that when I live in Brazil, I know how much I pay for the energy that I receive from the government, from the entities, but they don't pay for that. It's something, it's something that has made some sort of way of living in the society. They have to understand that it's not anything like this. What they have here in Iran, nobody has it outside of Iran because of the cheap energy they're using. And it's costs for the government, and the government is not receiving. That's the huge problem. That's some sort of internal problem that should be fixed.
So if they jacked up energy prices, that would create a political problem for the government.
Yeah.
Yeah. But let me, I think, this information operation, this propaganda campaign, because look, I was involved with the one that the CIA was doing against the Soviet Union back in, let's see, I was November of 1985. I worked on that for 8 weeks. So I saw how this works from the other side. And you always start with a kernel of truth. But then the question is, who's the audience? Who are you trying to influence? And I would argue that this propaganda campaign that's underway about all the riots and the unrest and the protests, it's not directed at Iran. It's directed at the United States and Europe to create this perception that, oh yeah, the government is weak and it's going to collapse, to justify what Israel and the United States are going to try to do. And so, what do you think, Professor?
I agree. I think that first of all, what Nima says is absolutely correct. I mean, our consumption is really out of control. That includes people like me. I mean, since gasoline is so cheap, since natural gas is cheap, it's not as if I wear a jacket at home, even when it's very cold, because it really doesn't cost me anything to pay gas bills, comparatively speaking. Of course,
Right.
for people in Iran who are very, have huge financial difficulties, and everything is costly. But what the government wants to do is, because President Pezeshkian is, and like President Raisi before him, both of them are left-leaning, even though they come from different political camps, although both are centrist or were centrist. The plan basically is to decrease the subsidies slowly and to use them for infrastructure and for disenfranchised neighborhoods, and to increase wages or support from the state for people who are less well off. But the problem is that it's not easy, and you're going to have inflation, and so it's going to, there will be hiccups, and then the West will use this opportunity to create unrest. They will use any new policy, any change in Iran, any fracture and they'll exploit it to the maximum. But I agree. I think it has very much to do with the Netanyahu-Trump. I think Western intelligence agencies are deeply involved. That's where the money comes from. How does it work? You have kids on the street. They're paid through Bitcoin, with Bitcoin or the equivalent, and they meet people online, and they are cultivated through social media. Everyone does this. I mean, Iran does this too, not for violence. The West uses it for violence. In Iran, over the last year, a number of people have been arrested in Israel, and they say they've been spying for Iran. I would assume the Iranians have been cultivating people to carry out espionage through the internet. That's the easiest way to do it nowadays. But in any case, I don't have insider information, but based on what I've read in international media, that's how it works. So the West, which has lots more money, they would obviously use this, but they use it for violence, and they cultivate young people. They cultivate people who are in organized crime, And there's one clip where some young lady is giving drugs to some these young men on the streets in, I think it was, which city was it? Qazvin. I'm not sure either Qazvin or Zanjan. Anyway, so but they arrested her, of course. But the point is that it's these sort of people who are very much involved in the violence, in the not in the peaceful demonstrations. The peaceful demonstrations. I mean, we've had, as I said, during the first day and on other days where we had peaceful demonstrations, no one intervened. But the problem is the police, I mean. But the problem is that these groups come in and they turn it into violent demonstrations. I mean, when we look at the demonstrations in the UK where old women are carrying placards saying no to genocide and they're taken away, or in Germany, people are beaten and battered and arrested for having a kafia out of solidarity for the Palestinians. So to stand and get this young woman who was murdered by ICE hours ago. That's they have no, and the worst of course is the genocide in Gaza. But these intelligence agencies, what is the objective? I don't think that they're dumb enough or foolish enough or ignorant enough to think that the state is going to collapse because of these riots. What I think they want to do is to create an image, as you alluded to, of a weakened Iran. What does that do? That justifies
Right.
violence. That doesn't justify it, but that's what the objective is, to make it more acceptable to the public, just like in Venezuela.
Right.
What did they do? They strangled the country. Then they created a blockade. They were hoping through the blockade, perhaps, that there would be unrest in the country and that people, and then nothing happened. So after, they started killing people on boats, nothing happened. And then they just went after President Maduro and killed 100 people. All of this was, and then what did the Western media do? The whole time they were saying this is an evil regime. Maduro is evil.
Right.
Even those who were critical of the policies, they were justifying it. That part of the mainstream media, which is anti-Trump, they were still justifying it by saying Maduro is evil.
Right.
And so when the Israeli regime attacked Iran during the 12-day war, and I think they spoke together during that period, what was the Western media saying? They're saying Iran is evil. I was on this guy's show. What's his name?
Piers Morgan.
Piers Morgan. And when he put me on the show, he was basically reading out a list of all the evil things that he was claiming Iran does. Iran is evil for this. Iran.
Right.
And what was he basically doing? He was trying to, and people like him were trying to create an environment where an illegal war seems legitimate to ordinary people, because they say, well, they're evil. Correct, right? It's an illegal war, but they're evil people, so it's okay. And of course, the Europeans supported the war. No one. The German chancellor said Israel is doing our dirty work for us. So I think it encourages war. It justifies war, illegal war. It justifies death and destruction. And Western media, as we know, is not free. It is very much linked to the state, and so they will basically say more or less what needs to be said.
Yeah. Well, let me bring this down to a more practical level, just because again, I'm trying to help people outside of Iran understand what daily goes on. Now, I lived in Argentina from like the end of December of '83 through January, February of '85. That was a period of hyperinflation, and that's a little bit of what Iran's going through right now. And what I discovered there, how people lived, there was a at least 2 to 3 times a week, I'd have to go down to the money exchange place, the Casa de Cambios, they call it in Spanish. But I have to show up there. I was in great shape. I had dollars, so I could go in, man, and I get the pesos. Whereas other people were coming in trying to buy dollars to try to preserve their capital. So, like Nima, you showed up with Brazilian reales, right? And,
Yeah.
so you're living large. I mean, yeah, you can buy what you bring, the income you earned in Brazil. You can take, family out for dinner. Well, I'll give you an example. When I lived in Argentina, my wife and my son, who my son is about 2 years older than you, Nima, and we lived with an Argentine family, Ana and Beto Paredes, and they had 2 daughters. So we all went out to dinner, and I bought. We went to an Italian restaurant. That was 7 people. We ate dinner for $15 total. Are you seeing that? So one, are there the cost of the money exchange businesses? Are they very active in Iran? And two, are you finding that with your Brazilian currency is going a long ways?
Yeah, first of all, we cannot use Brazilian currency here. Then I send, because there is an exchange office in Brazil that can send Brazilian real to Iranian real. Here, I send that to one of our accounts here in Iran in real. Then I'm using the currency, Iran currency here. But the exchange rate is something like or it'd be 24,000 real here, 2 months here, which is
So say that again. You froze up a little bit there.
same experience. You see it's much cheaper than we receive in Brazil, for example, what we use in Brazil, what we consume in Brazil. And you see that sort of, difference between the two. But after all, when I talk with people, somehow, yeah, the level of the money they spend during the 1 month, for example, 1 week, is not that much different from what we use, because you have to compare, Larry. Let's put it this way: you have to see the basics. And
Wait, say it, Nima, say that again, because you're freezing up there for a bit.
Can you hear me right now?
Yeah, I hear you fine now.
Yeah, she
again. This is not live, right?
No, it's not live, so it'll be edited.
Okay. Your voice was breaking up the whole time, almost.
Yeah, and can you hear me right now, Larry?
Yeah, you're fine. Go
Is
ahead.
it?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, for example, someone who receives, for example, a regular functionary of the government receives the lot. I don't know what would be that amount, but I compare it with my sister's salary. What is the difference? Literally, what I spend in Brazil, considering Brazilian currency, is the same thing here in Iran. And they receive things much cheaper than what we receive in Brazil, because their salary is less than what we receive in Brazil. But after all, you compare the two situations, you don't see that much of difference. After all, in my opinion, you don't see that happening. But people here, some sort of prediction, some sort of concept was created, because Iran is located. Larry, let's put it this way. Let me put it this way. Iran is located in a very strategic region. It's located, is related to to the southern part of Russia. All these, this region, this West Asia, is, you accept it or not accept it, you have to deal with the reality of the oil in the region. You have to deal with the reality of these new political issues, considering the fight between the East and the West, or and the East. And Iran is right in the middle of this fight, Larry.
Yeah.
That's why this huge propaganda. I think mostly we can talk about the economy hours and hours, but in my opinion, the issue is not just the economy. The issue is the location of Iran. And what has happened in Syria shows how the West wants to dominate the whole region. And Iran is the only force in the West Asia who doesn't want to obey the United States and the
Yeah.
Western power. That's the huge issue. That's one of the greatest issue with what is happening in Iran. You have to understand, why do they spend a lot of money to make this sort of thick propaganda? Why do they need to do that? Because of Iran, because of
Yeah.
the reality of Iran. Iran recognizes today, the government in Iran recognizes that how important East, Russia, China, and the global South is for the future of the country. And as time goes by, these people, these so-called opposition outside of the country, they see they're losing the battleground. They're losing everything. That's why I think this is the final battle between the opposition, and they're trying to do everything. They're throwing everything, because if women life freedom has started after the Mahsa Amini's death, has just died, have passed away. There is no that sort of movement. People are just living their lives here normally, and they have to make something else. And this is the final moment for them, Larry. They're trying to do everything.
Mhm.
And the final goal is not Iran, Larry. I genuinely believe that goal, as it was in Ukraine, is
Wait, hang on for a second. You broke up. So you genuinely believe?
I genuinely believe that the fight is not between Iran and the United States, or between Russia and the United States. The fight is between the and the and Russia are battleground for what is happening between the East and the West.
Yeah. So, I mean,
And
Iran is just a pawn in this.
exactly, Iran is a battleground. Russia is a battleground for the West,
Yeah.
because they want to get to China. After all, they see China as the ultimate enemy. And this is what's happening. Iran is on the way to reach to China, because you have to. Iran, look at what has happened, Larry, in the Middle East. All these Arab states are under the thumb of the United States. The only country that is resisting this sort of oppression is Iran. On the other hand, you see Russia, and these two countries are the main, the main countries who provide, energy to China.
Yeah.
China is the big engine that without energy cannot be, cannot survive. So you have to bring these two countries down before getting to them. That's the main goal, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And it's not, we can talk about the economy, but Iran is suffering. The reality on Iran is the sanctions are hitting the Iranian economy. And everybody here and many people understand what's going on. And they understand the reality of the future of Iran. The future is not with a country that is attacking Iran while they're negotiating with Iran. And they don't see this sort of behavior coming from Russia and China. It comes from the United States and the West.
Well, let me ask, Professor, or look, as I look at the situation, I would argue Iran is in a better situation now economically than it has been any time in the last 10 years for this reason. 10 years ago, Russia and China were on board with Europe and the United States in enforcing sanctions on Iran. And now they've said, hell no, we're not doing that anymore. We're not going to allow the West to impose these sanctions. And, particularly China has stepped up significantly its investment in Iran, as well as Russia. So you've got a stronger economic relationship with both Russia and China. Is that translated anywhere yet? In maybe it's too short of a window for it to have an impact, but I would argue at least midterm to long term, much brighter future for Iran than it would appear at the present time.
Let me combine what you said, which I agree with what Nima said, which I agree with as well. For example, in Iran, I think life is not all that different from in Brazil. Because if you include the subsidies, many things in Iran are cheaper, but wages are also less. So, but when you combine them, the two countries are not all that different. If I understood Nima correctly, that's also my thinking about Iran compared to many other countries that are not doing terribly poorly. Iran is better off than most countries in the world. If you compare it to India or most African countries or many parts of Latin America, um, Iran is not bad. But there are two things. One is that there's a huge Persian language media apparatus in the West, which tells Iranians day and night how miserable you are. And that does have an effect. So if people feel, and I'm saying that there isn't poverty or economic difficulty for many Iranians, there are those who have faced great difficulty with low wages or without jobs, partially due to the sanctions that exists. But many people do think, or they're pretty well off, they do feel that they are poor. And that is because they're constantly being told that they're poor. So a lot of people who are actually doing okay are among the people who complain the most about the situation. And that is because of this propaganda. So again, I'm not negating poverty and I'm not negating economic difficulty, but in this sense, Iran is unique. There is no other country which has this huge media apparatus that is more. There are more TV channels outside of Iran propagating against Iran than there are inside Iran that belong to like that are speaking the opposite or supporting the state. That's how much money is invested in this, and it's been going on for many years. Why? Because 10 years ago, the Russians and the Chinese, as you rightly pointed out, when they were closer to the West, when there were less difficulties between them, there was no media against Russia or there was no media against China. So all the investment was against this axis of evil, meaning Iran. And situation back then was more difficult than now because back then Russia and China were still on the rise. They were very cautious. They didn't want to do anything to really anger the United States. So they kept a distance from Iran. But gradually, as antagonism towards Russia and China increased, they tilted closer to Iran. And then of course, under President Raisi, we had Iran join BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And now, under President Pezeshkian, Iran its economic relations with Russia and China, among others, is developing. I do believe that you're going to see the results of this in the coming years.
Mhm.
It's not something that changes society overnight, but I think we're going to see gradual change unless something dramatic happens in the world, which is that's a different issue. I think that problem with having a decent relationship with the United States if the United States behaved like a normal country. But since it doesn't, the Iranians, when the Europeans and the Americans shut the door, then the Iranians are going to move and do business and have relations with those whose doors are open. The doors to Moscow, the doors to Beijing today are more wide open than they've ever been before. So I do think that in the long term, we're going to see change. But as Nima rightly pointed out, we are at the high point of antagonism. We've seen how he's behaved over the last year in attacking one country after another, allowing the Ukraine war to continue. Now, apparently, he's going to, there are going to be new sanctions by Congress against Russia. With his green light, if I'm not mistaken, we're going to see the world. We're at a stage where U.S. antagonism towards Iran is at its high point, and if they don't succeed now, I think then it's over because Iran, once it passes, if it goes through this period successfully, then I think the United States is just going to have to pull back and rethink. But I do not believe that there's a chance in the world that can be unbiased. If the hit.
You need to repeat that again because you were breaking up with slow down on the internet.
Okay, from where?
From about a minute ago, you started to say your comment about the U.S. action going forward.
Okay. I believe that the United States is putting its antagonism towards Iran is peaking, and but I don't think they're going to succeed. I don't think that they have a chance in the world of success, whether through trying to undermine Iran internally or through war. I think that it will fail. The riots will ultimately die down. People are going to be increasingly angry towards the rioters, as we're seeing. And if there is war, the Iranians are going to hit much harder this time around than last time,
Yeah.
because Iran is actually, for the first time, preparing for war. In the past, they were developing and creating defenses, but but now that they've experienced war, they are preparing for the real thing. And during the last 7 months, my understanding is that Iran's offensive capabilities have increased very significantly, and they're working on their defensive capabilities. But one final point that I should point out is that Iran's capabilities against the Israeli regime, which are very effective, as we saw from during the 12-day war. The Israeli Netanyahu was the one who wanted a ceasefire, not the Iranians. But Iran's real defensive capabilities are directed towards the United States. Most of Iran's capabilities, missile and drone capabilities, and naval capabilities, underwater drones and so on, are directed at the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean.
Right.
Why? Because the United States has for decades been threatening Iran with war. They've been saying all options are on the table. They surrounded Iran. They occupied Iraq, Afghanistan, at height of power in Central Asia too. And so Iran was completely surrounded. So they started building these capabilities to protect themselves, not against the Israeli regime, but against the United States. And so it's the real potential of Iran are the medium and short range missiles and drones that are directed towards the Persian Gulf and the other side of the Persian Gulf. And those countries, those tiny countries that host U.S. bases, Iran, if there's real war, they'll be seen as complicit. I mean, during the 12-day war, the Americans carried out a single strike, and Iran hit back because Iran did not want to escalate. So Iran destroyed assets of the United States in Qatar, in Doha. It was a proportionate response. And 6 of the missiles struck and destroyed U.S. intelligence gathering facilities and radar capabilities in Doha. But if there's going to be a war, then that's going to be the end of oil and gas from West Asia and the Caucasus. And that will bring a global economic meltdown. And a couple of Americans told me that, well, the U.S. is self-sufficient in oil. But the problem is that it is self-sufficient, but some few billionaires are going to make a lot of money, but ordinary people who want gasoline or who need energy for their businesses will collapse. They will no longer be able, because the price of gasoline will go through the roof. So I do think that there are enough sane people in the Pentagon who would have recognized this, but we're talking about Trump and Netanyahu, so nothing's.
Well, listen, I appreciate both of you coming. I know Nima's going to have to bug out. He's got to go do some more. He's got to work on his dialogue. But listen, I appreciate our friendship, but I also am very grateful to both of you for taking time. Because I think you've those who will take time to watch this, they'll get some new insights into Iran. That Iran's not this boogeyman that the West is portraying, and that Iran is not alone in the fight that's coming up. But if people just understand this, there are other Iranians like Nima and like Mohammad. They are wonderful people. They are not bent on conquering the world. They just want to live in peace. So I thank you, my brothers. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Larry. It's a great pleasure.
All right.
And an honor.
We'll do it again.
Sure.
Definitely. Sure.
All right. Take care.
Take care.
See you later. By the way, Larry.
Yes.
You're not going to Moscow for this event?
Hang on here. Let me just pause the recording. Thanks so much for watching. I think it's so important to actually understand what's really going on in Iran. There is a move afoot by the United States and Israel to launch an attack to justify more war and suffering on the Iranian people. We need to do everything in our power to stop that. If you enjoyed this program, please hit the like and subscribe button. It does help the channel grow. This is the first broadcast of Countercurrents for the new year. Thank you for watching. I'm Larry Johnson. This is Countercurrents.